review 2, number 36 through 40. Number 36 and 37 I have written here, and we are solving equations. So this is actually material from test 1 that you're going to keep on seeing. It's going to be with you forever. So college algebra, you'll see this stuff too. They're just pretty basic equations that we need to solve. But if you look at number 36, the problem is it has fractions. So anytime you see fractions in equation, you want to get rid of them first. So we do that by identifying the least common denominator. So my LCD would be 10. And if you have trouble finding it, what I normally do is I just take the largest denominator, which is 10, and first see if the other numbers will go into it. So 2 will go into 10, 5 will go into 10, so we've actually found the LCD fairly easily. Now, if it doesn't work, you could always multiply the largest denominator and then see if the other numbers will go into it, and you just keep doing that until you find one. So for now, we're just going to use our 10, and since denominators, 1 is being divided by 2, 1 over here is being divided by 5, and 3 is getting divided by 10. So the way I undo all those divisions is I multiply by my least common denominator. So the 10 is going to multiply to every single term in my equation, whether there's a fraction there or not. So even if it's a whole number, it would get multiplied by the 10. But for us, we have all fractions here. So we are going to have 10 times our 1/2 minus 10 times 1/5 x, which equals 10 times our 3/10 x. And what normally helps is the whole number, we can always put it over a 1 so things line up a little bit nicer. And to multiply fractions, we've learned that we multiply them straight across. So numerators multiply to numerators and denominators to denominators. So we're going to go through and do all of this multiplication in hopes that we get rid of our fractions. So if we do 10 times 1, we'll have 10 over 1 times 2 is 2. Minus 10 times 1 over 1 times 5, but what we don't want to forget is to bring down that x. If you lose your x, things will not work out correctly. 10 times 3 is 30, over 1 times 10 is 10, and again, bring down that x. Now we should be able to simplify all of these fractions. So 10 divided by 2 is 5, minus 10 divided by 5 would be a 2x, 30 tenths x, so 30 divided by 10 would be 3x. So now we have a really basic equation to solve, and what I notice is that my numbers are actually already on one side together. So notice 5 is already on the left-hand side. It's our x's that are not together. So I'm actually going to move my minus 2x, and to do that we do opposite operation. So I'm going to add 2x to the left side, and if I add it to the left side, I have to do it to the right side. And I'm going to end up with 5 equals 5x. So to get that x by itself, we need to get rid of the 5. And the 5 and the x are multiplied together, so to undo multiplication, we will divide. And if I divide one side, I have to divide the other side. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Our 5's would cancel here and leave us with our x. So we find that x equals 1. And remember, you could check to make sure that this works out right. You can take the 1 and plug it in for the x in the original equation and check your solution that way. Okay, so now looking at 37, I ran into my 37 problem a little bit here, so sorry about that. So if we take a look at 37, at least we don't have fractions, but we do have some simplification that needs to be done. So on the left-hand side, 2x plus 6, that can't be simplified any further. But on the right side, we have 7 minus x minus 5. So we actually need to do some distributing, but a lot of people will think that it's the 7 that should be distributed, but notice the 7 is not right next to the parentheses. There's this minus sign right here. So you cannot distribute the 7. You only distribute what's right next to the parentheses. So let me get rid of this highlighting here. We are distributing this minus sign, which there's an implied -1 right here. So that's going to just change all of our signs. So let's bring down the 2x plus 6 equals 7. -1 times x is a -x, and -1 times -5 is a +5. On the last test, I saw a lot of you guys, you changed the x sign, but you didn't change the second number or the second term. You didn't change it to a plus sign or minus sign, whatever it was on the test. So be really careful that we distribute the -1 to everything inside the parentheses. So at this stage, we have some like terms now on the right-hand side that we can collect. We have 7 plus 5. So we will want to go ahead and collect those. We have 2x plus 6 equals 7 plus 5 is going to give us 12. Bring down our minus x. Now that each side is simplified, we can start moving things around. So you guys tend to want to put your x's to the left, so we can go ahead and do that. So to get rid of this minus x right here, we will need to add x, and if I add x to one side, I add it to the other. We would get 3x plus 6 equals 12. Now that the x's are all together, we need to get rid of the numbers, so we need to get the 6 over to the other side. So to do that, I will subtract, and we're left with 3x equals 6. The x is almost by itself, but we need to get rid of the 3. The 3 and the x are multiplied together, so to undo that, we will divide. If I divide one side, I gotta divide the other. We'll end up with x equals 2. And again, to check, you could just take your 2 and replace all of the x's in your original equation and simplify it down until the left side equaled the right side. That's how you would confirm your answer is correct. So looking at number 38, we have an equation that we're trying to solve again, but it has fractions. So we've got to work on getting rid of those fractions. So to do that, we have to identify our least common denominator. So to get the LCD, I always just take the largest denominator, which would be 4, and I first see if the other denominators would go into it. So you could look at the 3, but 3 is not going to go into 4. So 4 is not going to work. So next, I would do 4 times 2, which is 8. But if we look at our 3 again, 3 is not going to go into 8, so 8 is not going to work as our LCD. Next, we would do 4 times 3, which is 12. And then we know 4 will go into 12. 3 will also go into 12. So now that all the denominators will go into 12, we've identified our LCD. So we are going to take this entire equation, multiply it by our LCD of 12, and then the 12 is going to distribute to every single term here in the parentheses. So as you can see here in the blue, I've taken the 12 and multiplied the LCD to every single term in my equation. And just like before, to multiply fractions, we multiply them straight across. So numerators to numerators, denominators to denominators. So we can do 12 times our 2x, which is going to give us 24x over 1 times 3 is 3, plus 12 times 1 is 12, over 1 times 4 is 4, equals 12 times 9, which is 108, over 1 times 4, which is 4. And now we should be able to simplify everything. So 24x divided by 3 is 8x, plus 12 times 4 is 3, and 108 divided by 4 is 27. So now that the fractions are gone, we can just isolate our x's, So the 8x is already together, so I want to get rid of this 3, and to get rid of it, I will subtract it. And if I subtract from one side, I subtract from the other side. We're left with 8x equals 24. Last step to get the x by itself, got to get rid of the 8. 8 and x are multiplied together, so to undo that, we will divide. And we're left with x equals 24 divided by 8, which is 3. So now we're going to move on to number 39 and 40. They're both very similar, and you're still solving, but the problem is, notice 39 has two variables. We have an a and a b. So an equation that has more than one variable, you're not actually going to get like x equals 3 as a solution. So we can't do that. What you're really doing is just rearranging the equation for the indicated variable here. So 39, you're told, is negative 6a minus 3b equals 12, and you want to solve for b. So your b is right here, and that's the guy that we're trying to isolate. So we have to get rid of a couple things. We have to get rid of our negative 6a, and then also the negative 3. But the negative 3 and the b are being multiplied together, so we don't want to divide until the very end. So we will first work on getting rid of negative 6a, and we will do that by adding 6a to both sides. You have to be careful here. Make sure that if you add 6a to the left side, you're adding 6a to the right hand side. So these guys cancel, and I'm left with negative 3b equals 12 plus 6a will not become 18 or 18a. The reason why is 12 does not have an a, therefore 12 and 6a are not like terms. So the best we can do is just go ahead and bring it down. So I'm going to bring it down as 6a plus 12, because I know that good formatting is that the variables go first. 12a plus 6 will be just fine. It means the same thing. So now I need to continue to work to get b by itself. So b is being multiplied by negative 3. So to undo that, we will divide. And if I divide one side, we learn we have to divide the other side. So negative 3b divided by negative 3 leaves me with b. And I have 6a plus 12 divided by negative 3. So on test 1, I told you guys it was fine. Leave it that way. We really haven't learned how to simplify something like this. But as of test 2, you guys have learned that we would split this up to simplify. So we have 6a divided by negative 3 plus 12 divided by negative 3. We're going to get b equals 6a divided by negative 3 is negative 2a, and 12 divided by negative 3 would be a negative 4. So just in case you didn't have your a's first, you could have had negative 4 minus 2a. Both of those answers are correct. But you do now want to simplify. So we don't want to leave it here. We want to make sure we simplify further. So number 40 is actually really similar. We have negative 4y plus 3x equals negative 24. We are solving for our x. So our x is right here. So the first thing we'd want to get rid of is the negative 4y. So to get rid of the negative 4y, we will add 4y. And if I add to one side, I've got to come over here and add it to the right side. Okay, so we're going to have these guys cancel. We're left with our 3x equals negative 24 plus 4y. Again, not like terms, so it's just going to come down 4y minus 24. Then we need to get the x by itself, so x and 3 are being multiplied, so to undo that, we will divide. 3x divided by 3 cancels, leaves me with my x. 4y minus 24 divided by negative 3. I can simplify that by splitting it up. Now this one's a little different because will 4 divide by 3? So it won't. So that part is still going to stay a fraction. You can keep the y on top or even kind of pull it out to the side. That's fine. Just don't put it in the bottom. but minus 24 divided by 3. So 24 divided by 3 is 8. So we're at least able to simplify that number. And now you have your final answer.